Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really powerful story about self-discovery, but we're going to look at it through a super interesting lens. Think about your mind for a second, like it's a computer's operating system. It's running everything in the background, your thoughts, feelings, how you react to things. But what happens when that OS has a bug?
Just think about it. Those patterns you might see in your relationships, the ones that just seem to end in the same frustrating way over and over again. What if that's not just a string of bad luck? What if it's actually the result of one single identifiable bug that's running in your mental code? Now, that's the core idea from the author of our source material today. I mean, listen to that framing. They don't call this a diary entry. They call it a graduation thesis, a final paper declaring freedom after 32 years. 32 years of being trapped by something called anxious attachment. This is a story about finding that bug, diagnosing it, and finally debugging it.
Okay, so first things first, what exactly is this bug? Well, the author realized the problem wasn't their partners, it was a flaw in their own mental system. In the world of psychology, this bug has a name. It's called an anxious attachment style. And this bug wasn't subtle. It created a really clear pattern. After moving to a new city, the author was never, ever single. But every single relationship ended up being a carbon copy of the last one, a destructive one. The author explains it with this great analogy. It's like people with unstable attachment styles are magnets. They just pull each other in, creating this predictable and, often really painful cycle. All right, so you can't fix a bug until you know exactly what it's doing, right? You have to diagnose it. And that's what the author did. They sat down and pinpointed two very specific, very destructive patterns that just kept happening again and again in their love life. And here they are, the two feedback loops they were stuck in. In case A, when they dated someone else who was also anxious, their fears would just feed off each other. It led to all this controlling behavior, these constant loyalty tests, until eventually the whole thing just imploded. Then you have case B. When they dated an avoidant partner, the author's anxiety would feel totally smothering to the other person. That person would feel guilty, pull away, and eventually leave, which of course just proved the author's deepest fear right, that they would always be abandoned. Does that sound familiar to anyone out there?
So why do these patterns keep happening? When they dug deeper, the root cause was this strategy that the author calls the rescuer position. The idea was, if I can solve my partner's problems, if I can save them, then I'll be indispensable. They'll never leave me. Now, you can imagine this was like a magnet for people who needed saving, but it was a total repellent for emotionally self-sufficient people who just saw it as, well, kind of invasive and a big red flag for insecurity.
This is just such a raw and honest admission. The author looks back at their most toxic behavior, something their partners even called moral harassment, and realizes it wasn't about trying to hurt them. It was a desperate, panicked loyalty test. It was a completely twisted way of asking, will you still love me? Will you stay with me even when I'm like this? And it all came back to that same deep-seated bug, the absolute terror of being abandoned.
So once you've found the bug and you know what it does, how in the world do you fix it? Well, this is where the story gets really interesting. The author put together this incredible debugging toolkit, blending old-school psychology with some very new-school technology. Let's break down what was in this kit. First, they built the foundation. They read up on attachment theory from experts like psychiatrist Dr. Takashi Okada to really understand the why. Second, and this is the really wild part, they used a generative AI as a kind of objective therapist. They would just feed it their past experiences and let the AI analyze them without any emotional bias. And third, they used proven frameworks like cognitive behavioral therapy to take all those insights and turn them into real structured change.
But why an AI? I mean, what's the benefit? The author points to three huge things. For one, just writing it all out and giving it to the AI externalized the memories. It freed up their own mental working memory so they could look at their past more objectively. Two, the AI has this massive model of human behavior. It could compare the author's stories against, best practices and point out patterns they'd never see on their own. And maybe most importantly, the AI gave supportive, non-judgmental feedback. It created this safe loop for building confidence, which is actually really similar to how cognitive behavioral therapy works. Okay, so did it work? Did all this debugging actually pay off?
Well, the result wasn't just some minor patch. It was a full-blown mental operating system upgrade. Let's take a look at the before and after.
I mean, look at this. This is a total system overhaul. You can see the change in every single category. Self-worth goes from being totally dependent on what other people think to being internal, based on their own values. The relationship strategy changes from rescue and control to empathize and cooperate. Who they're attracted to completely flips, from people who need saving to stable, self-sufficient peers. But look at that last line. That's the biggest shift of all. The ultimate goal of the old system was just don't get abandoned. The goal of the new one? To actually be happy and fulfilled. That's a game changer. Of course, installing an upgrade is one thing. You've got to take that new software out and see how it runs in the real world, right? So the final chapter here is all about practice and seeing how this new OS actually performs day to day. And the first sign that things had truly changed came in this really small but powerful moment. The author realized they were genuinely attracted to a colleague who was smart and totally self-sufficient. Now, with the old OS, that person would have been written off as boring. Why? Because there was nothing to rescue. But the new, secure OS could finally recognize a stable, healthy person as an incredibly attractive partner.
I absolutely love this quote. It just perfectly captures that feeling of being both terrified and excited, all at once. It's like all the old, broken strategies for how to win at relationships are gone. It's a totally new game, on a totally new field. And even though the author doesn't know the rules yet, they have the courage to get out there and try.
Ultimately, this whole journey gives us such a powerful new way to think about self-improvement. It lets us see our own repeating struggles not as some kind of permanent character flaw, but as a bug in our programming, a bug that can be identified, understood, and fixed. So I'll leave you with the same question. What bugs might be running in your own OS? And what would your upgrade look like? Thanks for watching.